Lay TV face down on flat cushioned surface and remove all screw that secures the rear cover and the base. Should be all around the edge. These need to be removed. So remove base first. Now the rear cover. To reach the control board for download, you need to loosen the main chassis on top of it. So we remove the lower 3 screw. Remove all screws so that we can lift up the mainboard chassis. Make sure to disconnect all the power cord. And now we can lift up the mainboard chassis. Firmware connection is over here, and it says P3. And now that we can reach the control board for firmware upload, we are going to prepare connection to the firmware tool. The firmware tool has a metal base, so make sure to put insulation underneath, because we don't want to short any circuits. So now the firmware tool wire is connected to the control board. Just wanted to remind you that the firmware tool is marked on one side, and marking is facing the plastic connector. Now we put the mainboard chassis back on top because we still need to power the TV in order to do firmware upload. So we connect the 3 power wires. Now we connect AC power to the firmware tool. Turn on firmware tool by its power switch. Firmware tool is on. Now we're going to select on the power board switch 601. We will select auto mode for firmware upload process. We can select the firmware that we will download to the control board first by looking at the panel. There is a model for the panel. For this panel, it reads P42HDTV10A. That's the beginning of this panel model number. And we can match the firmware selection. We see here for 42X3, we will select slot number 7. We'll use the up button to select slot 7. It now reads 7 to indicate slot 7, and for the panel 42X3. Before we start the firmware update process, make sure the TV is powered and the power board are properly connected. There should be a clicking sound once you insert the AC power to the TV. If there isn't, make sure you check all the power connections are reinserted back. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 power wires. We're ready to begin firmware upload by pressing the green auto button on the firmware tool. And as you can see right now, the firmware process has begun. It's erasing the old firmware and it will write the new firmware. You can see on the firmware tool, the green LED on the right is indicating that it's working. Firmware upload is almost complete. When you finish, you'll get a message on the firmware tool's LED display. Okay, now we're ready to turn off the firmware tool. Now the firmware upload is complete. We will remove AC power to the TV and put the power board back in normal mode on switch 601. Now we're just going to remove the firmware tool connection. And again, we have to disconnect all the power wire just so we can get to the control board again. Take the firmware tool away. Reconnect LVCS cable back on the control board. Whenever we connect cables, be careful, we have to align it. Don't force it. So right now we're just putting the grounding wire back onto the screw mount. There are 4 of these power wires, power connectors. Now we work backwards to put the rear cover back on and the base back on. The rear cover may not go back on snugly. What you do is you lift the center of the rear cover, lift it up, so on the side you can fit it back in snugly. So for example, if I lift it and I'm trying to put it back in, it would lift the rear center of the back cover and then push on the side to fit back into the TV. And now we're ready to put the screws back on.